What's up, dude buddy guy? I'm Jaden Kuhlman, here with a very special video about Warren Beatty, my favorite actor and filmmaker. In the late 1950s, his inception in Hollywood as a manufactured star could be summed up in two words: misunderstood and underestimated. Behind the scenes, he treated his first 6 movies like a crash course in filmmaking, quickly learning the ropes and discovering his passion for directing. His major involvement in the production and release of his 7th film, Bonnie and Clyde, changed the industry forever and afforded him the luxury of never having to work again. From then on, he had the freedom to be as selective as he wanted when it came to choosing his roles. Beatty was able to take his life and career into his own hands, and that's ultimately what I admire most about him. Once an inescapable household name, nowadays he's virtually unknown to anyone under 35. That's where I come in. About 4 years ago, I hadn't really heard of him until I listened to an episode of The Rewatchables, where Bill Simmons mentioned that Beatty had turned down the role of Gordon Gekko in Wall Street, so I had to see the man who was somehow cooler than Michael Douglas. Watching Bonnie and Clyde was eye-opening. I'm always fascinated by anti-heroes and how actors manage to make their flawed characters likable. Most of my favorite movies center around this archetype. Beatty took that skill to new extremes as Clyde Barrow, where his character's violent crimes often take a backseat to his admirable, even aspirational traits. Ever since, I've studied his catalog, blown away by everything it has to offer. The films he made were important, often rich with social and political themes. He's an infamously private man, so in my experience, you get the greatest sense of who he is through his unusually small but impactful body of work. He was the leading man in every single one, of which he produced 10, wrote 6, and directed 5. In this video, I will be ranking and reviewing all 23 of them. The great movies easily outnumber the missteps, but I have to acknowledge the ones that don't quite work. Still, I hold no one's art in higher regard than his. Here is my reflection on the legacy of Warren Beatty. Town and Country. This was a pretty easy choice for the bottom, as this movie made me physically ill. Beatty plays Porter Stoddard, an affluent architect with homes on Park Avenue and Long Island. I make mention of this to express how low the stakes really are. His wife Ellie, played by Diane Keaton, serves as a mere roadblock between him and any young woman he lays eyes on. Their closest friends and other main couple of the movie, Griffin and Mona, are played by Gary Shandling and Goldie Hawn. Like Porter, Griffin cheats on his wife too, but that's fine because his wife cheats on him with Porter. Ellie, however, never gets her shot at revenge. What are you trying to say, screenwriters? Upon being confronted by Ellie, Porter shows no remorse for his actions and figures the only way to redeem himself is to sleep with more women. It's impossible to feel sorry for the guy. Nothing about this movie works. With an alleged budget of over $100 million, this film is a Frankenstein's monster of different scripts by different writers. And it's apparent that over time, different ideas for the story had come and gone. There are subplots that go nowhere, pointless set pieces, and voiceovers, sometimes. It plays like a desperate vanity project for Beatty.
Is there any woman in this room you haven't slept with, Porter? Obviously not.
Town and Country has a bunch of first-rate actors meandering through the dustiest bedroom farce ever made. A disaster not even he could bounce back from. It served as a final middle finger from Beatty, at least for some time. Oh, The Fortune. Equally eligible for last place is The Fortune. Let me tell you what it's like to watch The Fortune.
You know what I actually feel like doing? I'd like to get a hold of a gun and just bang! Like that.
I'm disappointed by this movie for what it could have been. Not only does it star my 2 favorite actors, but it also boasts the same screenwriter as my favorite movie, 5 Easy Pieces. So why didn't it work? While most of my disdain for this movie stems from the gross misutilization of Beatty and Jack Nicholson, I genuinely dislike The Fortune's premise and execution. Above all, it isn't funny. Two inept conmen, Nicky and Oscar, devise a plan to steal an heiress's family fortune. As their options dwindle, murder becomes their last resort. I question how this ill-tempered pair even wound up together. Nicky's relentless condescension toward Oscar wears itself thin quickly, and their personalities mesh like oil and water. Had the characters been written as intellectual equals or had qualities that suited the actors better, we could have seen Beatty and Nicholson play off each other. Instead, it ends up being every man for himself in a battle of egos. If Nicholson's larger-than-life persona wasn't suppressed by his character's submissiveness, he may have been able to single-handedly save this movie. But probably not. Stockard Channing is the weak link, and the film would have seriously benefited from someone else in her place. I don't believe that these guys would ever put up with her no matter how much money is involved. Disliking the main characters is one thing, but when I can't even tolerate the supposed good guy, that's the final nail in the coffin. The one thing I do enjoy is the 1920s setting and costume design, but that's not enough reason to watch this movie. At a merciful hour and a half, I suppose it could be worse. The fact that this is the only instance of Beatty and Nicholson starring alongside each other, with the exception of Reds, makes me bitter. In 1975, The Fortune was released right in between Beatty's second big hit, Shampoo, and Jack Nicholson's Oscar-winning performance in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. These two were in their prime, and the possibilities were endless. The Fortune is the missed opportunity of a lifetime, and they could have been the preeminent duo of cinema. Timing is everything. The Only Game in Town, a movie Beatty made so he could work with George Stevens, the director of the film that was a catalyst for his desire to become an actor, A Place in the Sun. Beatty stumbled into the lead role after Frank Sinatra backed out soon into production, which led to the biggest miscast of his career, and really through no fault of his own. The script is clumsy, masking any potential chemistry between him and Elizabeth Taylor. The two feel like they're in different movies, and they never seem comfortable with each other for a second. Beatty plays Joe Grady, a gambling addict with a mouth full of unpleasantries.
What are you nervous about?
I don't know how to get you from here to the bedroom.
That is the lousiest approach I have ever heard.
Not to mention, he's also disturbed.
Sorry, folks. There seems to be a breakdown in the audio portion of our program.
We got high. You and I. That rhymes.
I folded $100 bill into a little boat like when we were kids. I put it in the water, and I watched it float down the street till it came to a sewer and disappeared. The fact was that sailing that $100 bill down the drain had cheered me up tremendously.
You're very wise. Why, she said, unable to stifle her curiosity. Well, because I'd only break your heart, he said cavalierly.
Oh, I've made some nuts in my time, but you take the cake.
What Beatty does strikingly well is conveying Grady's crippling addiction to gambling with childlike intensity. It's a rare instance where a Beatty character doesn't have full control of his emotions. He comes off like a ticking time bomb prepared to destroy anything that gets in the way of him and the craps table. Elizabeth Taylor, who I absolutely adore, typically portrays strong, defiant characters, but as Fran Walker, she's reduced to a mere punching bag for Grady.
Carry me.
What?
Carry me into the bedroom. I like to be carried, please.
But then again, she does it to herself. Despite the two actors' small age gap, the vast difference in their characters' maturity makes them feel like they're a generation apart. They have an uncomfortable mother-son dynamic in a relationship that devolves into Joe hurling insults and Fran breaking down in tears. With most of the runtime taking place in Fran's apartment, their relentless arguments feel needlessly claustrophobic. The story takes place in Vegas, yet it was filmed in Paris per Taylor's request, leading to some of the strangest exterior shots I've ever seen. Some only last mere seconds. It makes the movie look cheap, but I'm sure it's where most of the budget went. This instantly dated melodrama feels more appropriate for TV screens and was a step back from Beatty's previous film, Bonnie and Clyde. Moving forward, he largely steered clear of irredeemable characters like Joe Grady, and that's certainly for the best.
Some enchanted evening, you may see a stranger.
Joe, wait, the house!
You may see a stranger across a crowded room, and somehow you know even then
Promise or Anything. This is a tough one. While this movie is fun at points and I enjoy the chemistry between Beatty and Leslie Caron, I can't put this movie any higher because of its fatal flaw. Beatty plays Harley Rummel, a mail-order filmmaker whose portfolio includes whatever this is. With increasing pressure to succeed, he is told by his manager that if he doesn't come up with something more commercial, he'll be fired. Enter Michelle O'Brien, Rummel's new neighbor and single mother. He accepts her request to babysit, and after a twisted epiphany, he exploits the kid in his movies to newfound acclaim and an influx in sales. This is obviously problematic, yet the film eerily never mentions this taboo, and I think that's worse than a movie that knows what it's doing despite not aging well. The rest of the plot is unremarkable. It's filled with cheap gags and a gratuitous use of freeze frames in an attempt to give the film an identity. As Beatty's first comedy, Promise or Anything was merely a stepping stone for his masterful work in the genre. The Roman Spring of Mrs. Stone. Beatty's second feature film stars Vivien Leigh as Karen Stone, an aging stage actress whose insecurities compel her to cancel her show and go on an indefinite vacation to Rome. Her husband abruptly dies on the plane ride there, but she decides to stay in Italy, spending most of her time alone and slowly leaving her celebrity identity behind. This is not a character study of Mrs. Stone as one would assume. I leave the film knowing as much, if not less, about her than I did at the beginning. She's prideful and often rude, making no real attempt to find herself or fill the void in her life. People from her past try to correct her course, but their attempts are futile. A fresh-faced Beatty plays the narcissistic and materialistic Italian gigolo Paolo Di Leo. It's a curious bit of casting to say the least. He struggles to balance his tone with the overbearing accent, and loses it the most when expressing anger.
Will you stop thinking about eating and concentrate on me?
I give him the benefit of the doubt. This was a bold move and would have been an incredible feat to pull off at such an inexperienced point in his career. To his credit, you can tell he's trying, and he brings a kind of excitement to the movie that it wouldn't have otherwise. Even though both Di Leo and Mrs. Stone are objectionable in their own right, the deterioration of their turbulent, cold-hearted relationship is the most focused and gripping aspect of the plot. Another great facet of the movie is the setting of Rome. It's gorgeously photographed and implemented in every scene, but never feels quite welcoming enough to be the sanctuary Mrs. Stone was hoping for. Looks can be deceiving as it's style over substance for the Roman Spring of Mrs. Stone. The narrative beats you over the head with the idea that Karen Stone is drifting, but her actions point more to her being stuck in the same place. Unfortunately, it's the film that ends up drifting. Love Affair, the second remake of the 1939 romantic classic. After watching all three versions, I found this one to be the least essential. The story of two people falling in love despite everything in their lives going in seemingly opposite directions goes unchanged. That's ultimately this movie's greatest shortcoming. Beatty, who also co-wrote and produced the film, reunites on screen with his real-life wife, Annette Bening, following their triumphant pairing in Bugsy. Much of that chemistry remains intact here, albeit with more restraint. When these two are together, the movie builds real momentum, but when they're apart for roughly half of it, each moment is merely filler. Plenty of time is devoted to things like Mike Gambrell simplifying his finances and Terry McKay drudging through unfulfilling singing gigs, yet more exciting events like breakups with their fiancés happen off screen, missing what could have made for great dramatic turning points. It would have also given Pierce Brosnan's character more to do, rather than assigning him to the role of a wet blanket. Love Affair is stunted by its lack of creative risk. Keeping with the original's old-fashioned ideals of romance is refreshing, but its commitment to the same plot points and pacing feels out of place and drags in a modern context. Without more of Beatty's input beyond a few self-referential touches,
You know that I've never been faithful to anyone in my whole life.
the whole thing feels like a missed opportunity. Still, as a tribute to his wife and to a bygone era of film, Love Affair captures the sentiment sincerely. Kaleidoscope, Beatty's first turn at a caper flick. Barney Lincoln, an unemployed playboy, breaks into the Kaleidoscope playing card factory to mark specific cards with a distinguishing insignia. This enables him to amass a fortune at various casinos around Europe. I guess he had to bank on every table using the newest shipment of cards? His girlfriend, Angel McGinnis, informs her police detective father of Barney's misdeeds. The detective then blackmails Barney into defeating an infamous drug smuggler at poker, the drug lord being the most generic, wannabe Bond villain a screenwriter has ever farted out. That's this movie, James Bond on a budget, even going as far as to have Barney's car be a 1964 Aston Martin convertible. While the movie itself might not be particularly special, its importance lies in what it meant for Beatty. His earlier roles were largely experimental, but as Barney Lincoln, he finally nails his movie star quality.
Shazam!
Kaleidoscope's witty dialogue makes Beatty's performance feel ever so comfortable and loose, and he completely carries the movie as a result. He would take elements of this performance for his portrayal of Clyde Barrow, as his next endeavor, Bonnie and Clyde, would soon become the turning point of his career. This is a win for Beatty. As for the film, Kaleidoscope is full of personality, but much of it is clearly borrowed from elsewhere. Dollars. Here we find Beatty fighting crime with crime. He plays Joe Collins, a self-made vigilante with a temporary job as a banker in Hamburg, Germany. Familiar with the inner workings of the bank's state-of-the-art security and aware of the crooks utilizing its vault to transfer dirty money, Collins orchestrates a heist of his own. His accomplice is the bubbly call girl Dawn Devine, marking Goldie Hawn's first on-screen appearance with Beatty. Their unlikely pairing creates a unique dynamic and allows for playful banter.
Oh, you're so square. You are a victim of the establishment.
You're not?
Don't be silly. I am the establishment. I'm for smoking and drinking and infidelity and money, and I go to
These
church.
guys are the establishment. These guys, hidden money, big money, that's the establishment. Right there. You're not one of them. You work for them. Everybody. Judges, lawyers, politicians, even the banks, they work for them. All of us, we're all working for them.
My God.
There's so much potential here, I wouldn't mind a few more scenes with just the two of them. On the other hand, I would have liked to have seen more complexity in the villains. For example, one bad guy does unspeakable things to his own cat. Sure, it's campy and over the top and the quickest way to turn me against him. Beyond that though, few meaningful traits are established. Is greater focus on the crooks in question necessary to the plot? No, but in terms of enhancing my immersion into this story, I found it to be the missing piece. The heist itself is where the movie reaches its peak. It's a nerve-wracking experience, with Collins relying solely on needlepoint maneuvers and his smooth-talking abilities to make it through. The strong rapport he's built with his unsuspecting coworkers makes them think he's just a victim in this situation, but one wrong move could jeopardize everything. Dollars is almost there. Its premise is exceptional, but its criminal underworld begs for further development in order to make an impression. In a story that blurs the line between heroes and villains, I want both sides to receive equal time and attention. Kaleidoscope and Dollars are the only films in the heist genre Beatty ever attempted. Never able to find the perfect script, this time he came considerably closer. All Fall Down. Based on the book of the same name, All Fall Down tells the story of an Ohio boy named Clinton, who hitchhikes down to the Florida Keys in search of his older brother, Barry Barry, only to find him locked up for mutilating a woman. Jesus. Clinton bails him out, only for Barry Barry to be uninterested in returning home with him. Like any younger brother, Clinton idolizes Barry Barry, but as the plot moves along, to his dismay, he finds the abhorrent actions of his big brother are not something to be aspired to. Compared to the book, this movie failed to capture the complex nature of Barry Barry, further dehumanizing the already monstrous character and removing any sympathy for him as a result. He leaves a trail of destruction everywhere he goes, but you rarely get a look into what made him so violent and tortured. It makes you wonder why his family fawns over him so much. That's a major oversight, but it doesn't ruin the movie by any means. The scenes that explore his family's fractured relationship more than make up for it. They're all under the same roof, yet so hopelessly distant. This emotional separation is further accentuated by Clinton and Barry Barry referring to their mother and father by their first names. The parents' hearts are in the right place, but still, this isn't the ideal environment for any sound person to grow up in. The supporting cast livens things up, and I empathize with them in a way I can't with Barry Barry. I mean, if every movie had Carl Malden, the world would be a better place. While this adaptation falls short of doing justice to its main character, I still enjoy its bleak atmosphere and somber portrait of a family that strayed too far. Rules don't apply. Beatty's return to acting, directing, and screenwriting came in 2016, 15 years after the catastrophe of Town and Country. Rules Don't Apply is a passion project he had been developing since the 70s. At its core, it's a love story about two employees of Renaissance man Howard Hughes. The film follows the latter half of Hughes' life and his increasingly questionable sanity. He would often hire young actresses to appear in his films. Marla Mabry is a new arrival to Hughes' staff of starlets. As she falls in love with her personal driver, Frank Forbes, the serious pacing issues regarding their characters' evolutions become increasingly apparent. Marla's dilemma is the conflicting values between her conservative upbringing and the seductive prospect of stardom. Upon her mother's leaving, Marla tries to maintain her faith, but her morals quickly go out the window during her second meeting with Hughes. Even her sudden falling for Frank happens completely out of the blue. Equally jarring is Frank's progression from a timid cab driver to Hughes' self-assured right-hand man. The motives behind their contrarian actions are never communicated, and with each passing scene, it's never clear how much time has passed. From what I've heard, these abrupt shifts have less to do with a fault in the script and more to do with what was lost in the final edit. Through this rushed character development, Lily Collins and Alden Ehrenreich's performances still shine through. It's obvious that they treated the material with the utmost respect and delicacy, and the result is an impressive showcase of their talents. The time that could have been spent further exploring Marla and Frank is substituted by more scenes of Beatty's Howard Hughes. It's a case of priorities being in the wrong place. That's not an easy thing to say, as he's undoubtedly the only reason I'm here, but with the film already being over 2 hours, there isn't much room for him without compromising the narrative. I won't bash a blessing though. Bring on the Beatty. Hughes shows up 25 minutes in, and remains shrouded in darkness for nearly his entire screen time, a sort of visual companion to Hughes' elusiveness. Beatty's portrayal of the infamous rapscallion is the main source of comic relief, but with a few moving and introspective monologues to round out his character. Overall, Rules Don't Apply has its flaws, but I am so grateful it exists. It's surreal to see Beatty in a modern movie, especially one that proves he's still got it. As reinforced by this film, his sharp comedic timing and keen eye for casting prove that age and time away haven't slowed him down one bit. His decades-long labor of love sadly flew under the radar, and is forever overshadowed by the definitive Howard Hughes movie, Aviator. It's bittersweet knowing this will most likely be Beatty's last time in front of and behind the camera, but it's a worthy coda to his illustrious time in Hollywood. Dick Tracy. The meteoric success of Tim Burton's Batman in 1989 proved there was money to be made in comic book movies, and Dick Tracy was one of the first attempts to capitalize on it. They even got Batman's composer, Danny Elfman, to turn in a shamelessly indistinguishable score. Beatty, who claimed to have grown up and learned to read on the original Tracy comic strip, stepped up to direct, produce, and portray the titular square-jawed detective. He hired his usual cohort for production and cast, with newcomers Madonna, Al Pacino, James Caan, and Dick Van Dyke. Pacino was perplexingly nominated for an Oscar as Tracy's nemesis, Big Boy Caprice.
I want Dick Tracy dead!
And Dustin Hoffman earned what was possibly the easiest paycheck of his career playing Mumbles. I'm kidding. These guys do a great job. The Oscar thing though, that's not a joke. Madonna basically plays herself as the seductive nightclub singer, Breathless Mahoney. She's at her best going toe-to-toe with Beatty in their numerous scenes, but seems completely disinterested at other times.
Hey! That was a silly thing to do. He's the best piano player in town.
Shut up!
Nonetheless, her performance is leagues above her time in Shanghai.
You know, I could have stayed home in Brookline, Massachusetts and married a nice Ivy League banker.
Why didn't you?
Well, the whole country's standing in a bread line, and I just wanted to do something useful. Look how I wind up with a bunch of chickens.
They're ducks.
Dick Tracy is deservedly praised for its stunning set design, opting for meticulously painted backgrounds, eye-catching colors, and grotesque makeup. It's a true visual masterpiece, and it's a breath of fresh air amidst the CGI oversaturation of today. The cast perfectly complements the setting, and although many of the bigger stars are made almost unrecognizable, their familiar personalities are unmistakably present. In terms of the plot, a little too much time is spent diving into Tracy's private life. This includes his growing attachment to the kid he rescues, his struggle to stay faithful, and his reluctance to take a safer, less fulfilling job as chief of police. Each situation aggravates the tension between him and his partner, Tess Trueheart. These scenes are well written, and the juxtaposition of Tracy's grounded home life against the cartoonish backdrop is an admirably bold choice. It's just not what I want from a comic book movie. Fleshing out the character of Dick Tracy comes at a cost to the pace, where the only real action scene takes place within a brief montage at the halfway mark. That also goes for Big Boy's eventual overtaking of the city. Another quick montage is all you get. It would have been best for the first movie to focus mainly on Tracy fighting crime and his detective work, and reserve further character development for a sequel. Speaking of which, although this is Beatty's highest grossing movie, it was still seen as a flop, making a little over a third of Batman's revenue and dismissing any talk of making Tracy a franchise. At this point, getting to see Beatty put on the yellow hat once a decade is the closest we're going to get to another installment. With a style never truly replicated, Dick Tracy's remarkable craftsmanship and star-studded cast make it worth your time. But don't expect a high-speed thrill ride like Tim Burton's Batman. Mickey 1. An obscure picture, a one-of-a-kind picture, and an endlessly confusing picture. It's apparently an allegory for McCarthyism. If you're looking for a comprehensive analysis on the parallels between the plot of this movie and McCarthyism, you've got the wrong guy. I don't see it, nor did Beatty upon taking the part. However, there are a few key exchanges that are there to clue you in.
Waiter, let me mix this man's next drink.
Blessed are the pure in spirits. There's nothing wickeder than a mixed drink. I wouldn't say this kid gets drunk, but they caught him last night putting pennies in a parking meter and looking up at the clock on a Wrigley building to see how much he weighed.
Brother Rat, get him up here. Get him up there.
This doesn't mean it isn't enjoyable to watch. The cinematography is delightfully bizarre, taking cues from the French New Wave occurring in cinema at the time. It follows Mickey 1, a playboy and gambler whose frivolous lifestyle has gotten him into considerable debt with the mob in Detroit. Unable to ever repay them, he flees to Chicago and becomes a comic with meager success. In a fit of paranoia, he quickly learns he can trust no one. Notable is that this is Beatty's first collaboration with director Arthur Penn, who Beatty would later choose to direct Bonnie and Clyde, a more successful integration of the French New Wave to an American audience. Mickey 1 is the less coherent predecessor that feels simultaneously dreamlike and nightmarish. Oddball characters and surreal locales make the world of Mickey 1 appear sentient as the walls close in on the titular character. This is certainly a hidden gem in Beatty's 60s flop era, and an underrated piece of filmmaking. It may not make a whole lot of sense, but you can still sit back and watch the pretty colors. Lilith. A disturbing romance between a therapist and his patient. Beatty plays Vincent Bruce, a soldier who becomes an occupational therapist at the local mental institution. Despite his obvious PTSD and lack of formal training, Vincent is quickly hired and assigned the institution's toughest case, Lilith Arthur. Lilith is a schizophrenic whose beauty, intelligence, and trance-like mystique captivate everyone. However, her magnetism has a dark side. She uses it to dominate and manipulate others emotionally, extending her control to even the most helpless and impressionable. Lilith embodies a sort of mother figure for Vincent, creating a significant power imbalance. He becomes devoted to serving her, which costs him his dignity and endangers others. Beatty's performance was panned at the time for being expressionless, and while that aspect is true, I'd say it only helps the film. It creates a sense of mystery around the character, and leaves his sanity in question from the very beginning. In the early 60s, movies tackling mental health disorders so extensively were rare. The patients are discussed in a conveyor belt-like fashion, suggesting that they could eventually be cured and reintegrated into society. The film also references a correlation between insanity and unhappiness, misconceptions that feel dated today. Still, the movie's relentless uneasiness remains ever present. The patients feel real, and even the non-patient characters are just off. It adds to the claustrophobia because, as evident from Vincent's interactions with others, he has no one to turn to but his greatest weakness, Lilith. This movie stands as the crown jewel in Beatty's filmography between his debut and Bonnie and Clyde. Its success stems from its intense subject matter, foreboding atmosphere, and peculiar characters. Contrary to popular belief, Beatty's performance significantly contributes to the film's effectiveness. Ishtar. I'll never understand the hate this one has gotten over the years. A story about two offbeat New York songwriters taking a gig in Morocco and getting involved with an ancient map that could destroy the Middle East just wasn't enough to get people in seats in 1987. Ishtar's reputation as an over-budgeted commercial failure and an even worse movie have persisted to this day. It took me a couple viewings, but I fully stand behind this movie. The first 20 minutes are my favorite of any Beatty film. It follows Lyle Rogers and Chuck Clark's escapades through New York, working on their songwriting craft while their lives abruptly fall apart. Realizing all they have left is each other, they receive a booking from their agent in the fictional town of Ishtar. This is where the movie begins to ebb and flow. The comedy is dependent upon the chemistry of Chuck and Lyle, yet they are apart throughout most of the middle act. Not to say there aren't other high points, like Charles Grodin as a CIA agent. He's hilarious as he delivers his outlandish lines in his signature deadpan.
Move the camel. Move the camel. The camel. Move the camel.
Move the camel. Where?
Anywhere is on my foot.
Oh. Sorry.
What the hell's the matter with that camel? Is he blind?
Yeah.
A genius choice I didn't know I wanted was the character swap of Hoffman and Beatty. Hoffman plays the charming ladies' man, and Beatty plays the unconfident doofus who can't function on his own. I don't know how they did it, but it's completely believable. He straight up looks like his mom dressed him. The songs they write along the way are so funny, and are amplified by their out-of-context delivery.
Most men lead lives of quiet desperation.
Oh, is that right? She said, come look, there's a wardrobe of love in my eyes. Take your time, look around and see if there's something your size.
The rest of the score is composed of instrumental renditions of Rogers and Clark tunes, and that just means I've seen this movie too many times. Ishtar's poor reputation undeservedly precedes it. It became a dirty word in the business and forbade director Elaine May from ever having another shot at making a movie. That's a shame because a film like this only could have come from her. It has a unique brand of comedy that those who are not in the know will understand and appreciate one day. The Parallax View. This is one of the most overtly political films in the Beatty pantheon. From All the President's Men director Alan J. Pakula, this classic yet forgotten thriller captures the paranoia and distrust felt in post-Kennedy America. Beatty is Joe Frady, a reporter who happens to be on the scene during a senator's assassination atop the Space Needle. Frady is unable to make it through security, however, preventing him from witnessing the tragedy. He is reminded of the event 3 years later when an old friend and witness confides her fears to him that she is next to be killed. She explains how several other witnesses have wound up dead over the years. Convinced it's all inconsequential, Frady is skeptical at first.
Call him up. It's a fishing accident. You want to hear about my day? I got some real problems.
You son of a bitch! You don't care!
It isn't until her inevitable death that he takes it upon himself to get involved and figure out who is behind these systematic killings. Side note, their conversation followed by a hard cut to her corpse is one of the coldest pieces of editing I've ever seen. As Frady, Beatty dodges his typical comedic shtick, opting instead for a more hard-edged and rugged persona. It's a welcome change that never feels like it's reaching. This is one of those movies that doesn't hold your hand through the plot, almost to a fault in the last 45 minutes, where I'm left scratching my head at some of the baffling plot twists. At this point, the dialogue becomes sporadic, leaving the final few scenes to be open for interpretation. The Parallax View does an incredible job of instilling fear, as the atmosphere it creates is tense and bleak. It's impossible not to draw comparisons to the real world, where being left in the dark about the truth is a foregone conclusion. It's apparent that the people who made this film were disillusioned by the many tragedies and governmental secrecy that occurred in the previous decade. Through this film, we're able to get a horrific glimpse into their apprehension. Bugsy, the lost great gangster movie. It bases its tale on the infamous mobster Ben Bugsy Siegel's business expansion to the West Coast, playing up his involvement in transforming Las Vegas into the iconic tourist attraction it is today.
I have found the answer to the dreams of America. The flamingo.
Siegel is humanized through one irresistible performance by Beatty, who portrays him as suave, enthusiastic, and light on his feet in one moment, and downright menacing in the next. Beneath his psychotic exterior is a broken man deeply affected by his failure as a husband and father. He's also loyal and generous to those he considers friends, but ruthlessly violent when they betray him. I read this version of Siegel not as a madman in control, but as someone completely overtaken by his impulses. He justifies brutality as an appropriate punishment for someone else's deception, and searches for redemption by contributing to something greater than himself.
The Flamingo will make all of our gambling interests legitimate.
The way Beatty is able to convey all this without the film ever actually analyzing what makes Siegel tick is why I'd point to this as his single greatest acting achievement. This production is where he finally met his match in Annette Bening as Virginia Hill, and the end result is explosive.
Use your imagination.
I'm using it.
Let me know when you're finished.
The movie's not interested in giving a history lesson. Siegel didn't really invent the Flamingo, nor was Las Vegas the primitive ghost town he arrives in during the film. But I have to hand it to screenwriter James Toback for the insanely creative ways he incorporates bits of truth into the plot. The anecdote of Bugsy's family renting the former home of singer Lawrence Tibbett gets turned into a scene of Siegel buying the house from him with a bag of cash and some inadvertent intimidation.
Does this bring you pleasure, Larry?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Then why don't I see you smiling?
His wife and children never making the move to LA with him, as they did in reality, is key to how the film develops Siegel's romantic double life, contrasting his exciting affair with Virginia Hill and the turmoil of his marriage. I don't mind fabrication if it makes for compelling storytelling, and each change here serves Bugsy's versatile tone while reinforcing its underlying theme of duality. In a genre dominated by gritty realism, this is a fresh alternative among the 90s gangster film renaissance. No wonder Beatty kept coming back to these likable bad guy roles because he's so good at them, and this one remains his finest work as an actor. Heaven Can Wait. Beatty's directorial debut was a phenomenon, achieving massive commercial success and earning him Oscar nominations in all 4 major categories: acting, directing, writing, and producing, a feat not seen since Orson Welles for Citizen Kane. That level of recognition might seem unfathomable for what may appear to be just another lighthearted comedy, but Heaven Can Wait offers far more beneath the surface. Joe Pendleton, quarterback for the LA Rams, gets into a bicycle accident and is taken to heaven before his time. With the help of his guardian angel, he's brought back to life inhabiting the body of a selfish industrialist named Leo Farnsworth. Joe then makes it his mission to rejoin the Rams in time for the Super Bowl. Joe Pendleton is the perfect movie star vessel for Beatty, the purest, most compassionate character he's ever taken on. Joe's good nature is most commendable when he has to sort out the wreckage caused by Leo Farnsworth's greed. Enter Julie Christie as Betty Logan, a school teacher who protests Farnsworth's plan to build an oil refinery in her small village in England. Guided by Joe's conscience, Farnsworth wins her over by introducing a more ethical approach to his operation.
Yeah, and we handle all the lawsuits that way. Let the other team build the power plants in all the wrong places. Let's be the popular players. We're just gonna have to forget about all these nuclear power plants until we find out if they're safe. And that refinery in Paglesham, we're just gonna have to relocate it. Sure, it'll cost us $35 million, but we don't care because we're gonna come out ahead in the long run. We're not in here for just one game, are we, fellas? We're in here to go all the way. Now let's get to the Super Bowl, guys, and when we get there, let's already have won. Okay?
The scene's commentary on the damage big business can inflict on people and the environment adds such unexpected complexity to the story, a reminder that Beatty's work always explores much deeper themes than it has any right to. The movie's humor and romance evoke the spirit of classic cinema from the 30s and 40s. It tastefully revives slapstick and farce, while its central love story remains classy and reserved, favoring longing, affectionate gazes over physical intimacy. These choices give the film a timeless appeal, which the cast further enhances. Julie Christie brings her befitting warmth and grace, and Jack Warden's heartfelt performance as Pendleton's trainer makes his friendship with Joe feel authentic from their very first scene together. Charles Grodin and Diane Cannon make for great comedic villains, with Grodin delivering some of the movie's funniest lines and stealing every scene he's in.
Miss Logan, I don't frighten anybody.
Sorry to disturb you, Mr. Farnsworth. Mrs. Farnsworth saw a mouse, but she's better now.
She just saw a mouse?
No, before, outside, but she relives it.
I'll be in the other room if you need me, sir. Excuse me.
Heaven Can Wait is the premier feel-good Beatty flick. It's like his own commercial, proving himself to be the complete package as both a movie star and a filmmaker. This one seems to be the enduring fan favorite these days, and that's for good reason. Its charm is eternal and deserves to be celebrated. Shampoo. This movie played into Beatty's public image as an irresistible ladies' man. Although it feels firmly grounded in the 70s, Shampoo is a period piece, taking place moments before the 1968 presidential election. The film follows George Roundy, a Beverly Hills hairdresser who is both a gypsy and a womanizer. His clients include numerous beautiful women, all vying for his attention. On top of this, George must pursue his career ambitions while juggling his relationships with his girlfriend, his ex, and a client who's married to his potential investor, and also happens to be interested in him. What separates George from Beatty's other characters is that he's not a victim of his circumstances. He's a victim of self-sabotage. Always distracted by the next gratifying thing, he struggles to find fulfillment in his self-indulgent lifestyle. George is impulsive and has the accountability and emotional maturity of someone half his age. This is hauntingly mirrored by the opening theme song's lyric, "Wouldn't it be nice if we were older, then we wouldn't have to wait so long." Despite having countless women to choose from, the choice he can't seem to make is deep down what he longs for most, a committed relationship. Shampoo isn't all doom and gloom. On the contrary, it's stylish, funny, and cleverly written as the main characters keep crossing paths in increasingly uncomfortable situations. The story is character-driven, allowing for a looser narrative. It's impressive how, despite the absence of a rigid plot structure, the pace still manages to feel tight and focused. While I empathize with George and find it intriguing how he uses his magnetism to win others back, he inevitably drags everyone down. I find myself simultaneously rooting for the others, hoping they move on from George, which would compel him to move forward as well. That's a true testament to not one, but 5 finely crafted characters. Shampoo displays the undeniable screenwriting prowess of Beatty and Robert Towne, and is a satirical glimpse into what Beatty's love life may have been like at the peak of his powers. Bulworth. Most of Beatty's films, even the more unassuming ones, have political undertones. This time he goes all in, playing incumbent Liberal Senator Jay Bulworth during the 1996 election. Facing bankruptcy from numerous bad investments, as well as apathy for a potential second term, he hires a hitman to end his life so he can escape his personal and professional crises. Struck by almost instant regret, he continues his campaign while on the run from assassination. This gives him a newfound freedom to speak his mind on a range of social injustices, most prominently racial equality. While the premise could be oversimplified to a white savior out of his element who becomes the voice of the oppressed, Bulworth is so self-aware that it eludes that trope, the same quality that keeps it from coming off as preachy or pretentious. What could have been a disaster in the wrong hands is when Bulworth raps. Rather than a safe, potentially tedious speech expressing his discontent with a myriad of issues, the rapping becomes an efficient and engaging way to deliver those same points. Whether or not Bulworth's views mirror Beatty's, he's incredibly articulate in recognizing the many forms of political corruption and how they all share the common goal of financial gain. Full of kinetic cinematography, eloquent rapid-fire dialogue, and satisfying twists, Bulworth moves at a blink-and-you'll-miss-it pace. A film that's brutally honest, brave, prophetic, and relevant. It raises the question, how might the truth unite us as a society? Bonnie and Clyde. The film that single-handedly cemented Beatty's place as a Hollywood legend. It's revolutionary for its experimental editing, visual symbolism, and depiction of violence. Collaborating once more with Mickey One director Arthur Penn, this is Beatty's first outing as a filmmaker. It's also the first time his name appears under the producer credit, reflecting his integral role in the movie's casting, music, and aesthetics. He is said to have meticulously obsessed over the most minor details on set, down to the manufacturing dates of the cars. This would later become a signature characteristic of his perfectionist approach to filmmaking. The main characters are a masterclass in building the perfect anti-heroes, as their beauty and freedom are both deceptive and alluring. Much of Clyde Barrow's likability can be attributed to Beatty himself. He radiates confidence and vulnerability, attaining the larger-than-life presence he had spent years cultivating.
You're good.
I ain't good, I'm the best.
Bonnie Parker, played by Faye Dunaway, is distinct for her curiosity and perceptiveness, making her feel like a stand-in for the audience as she's drawn into Clyde's treacherous lifestyle. Gene Hackman joins in as Clyde's brother Buck Barrow, who rounds out the band of misfits with a newfound family dynamic. There's never a dull moment. Laid-back scenes of the group hanging out offer a welcome break from the action before giving way to sprawling chase sequences and intense gun battles. The movie is not without its political undertones. The Barrow Gang is essentially in a fight for freedom against a social structure that had failed them. The scene in which they fire their guns at an old farmhouse repossessed by the bank expresses how economic uncertainty forced them down a dark path, turning to violent crime and thievery. It's a relatable struggle that makes you want the characters to succeed, an outcome that becomes progressively unrealistic. As the most influential and groundbreaking movie of Beatty's career, Bonnie and Clyde is the foundation of his legacy in Hollywood, and is what allowed him to remain an A-list actor and filmmaker for decades to come. This was my introduction to Beatty, and even after years of repeated viewings, I'm still struck by how thrilling it remains, and how boldly it stands apart from anything else of its time. McCabe and Mrs. Miller, a unique Western about an elusive man's pursuit to build his own community around the turn of the 20th century. Beatty plays John McCabe, a drifting entrepreneur who recruits a group of men with the enticing prospect of a brand new town, complete with saloons, coal mines, a church, and eventually a brothel. McCabe's past follows him. According to legend, he was once the ruthless gunslinger who killed the seemingly unstoppable outlaw, Bill Roundtree. This rumor adds complexity to McCabe's character and suspense to the story, as you're left wondering if this unassuming, gold-tooth-bearing chump is really capable of the things he's alleged to have done.
Who the hell was this Bill Roundtree?
Well, he was real well known.
I mean, who said he shot him?
I told you, everybody. He shot him with a Derringer.
That man? That man never killed anybody.
McCabe becomes business partners with Constance Miller, a prostitute who upscales the brothel and manages the town's finances. With her help, the town quickly becomes prosperous, but just as things are looking up, the Harrison Shaughnessy Mining Company approaches McCabe with an offer to buy him out. In turning them down, an unexpected dimension of McCabe's character is revealed: his integrity.
Comes a time in every man's life, Constance, when he just got to stick his hand in the fire and see what he's made out of.
What are you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about busting up these trusts and monopolies. That's what I'm talking about. Somebody's got to protect the small businessman from these big companies, and I'm gonna be the man. Constance, just because we ain't never talked about it don't mean I ain't got certain principles.
When he rejects multiple offers, the company resorts to more extreme measures, and it's here that the legend of McCabe's checkered past is put to the test. Can he really stand his ground and defend his town? The setting plays a huge part in the film's appeal. Backed by the haunting musical ambiance of early Leonard Cohen, the grainy cinematography and naturalistic audio create an organic feel. However, the ambient noise can sometimes hinder the ability to make out the dialogue in more crowded scenes. Subtitles are strongly recommended. McCabe and Mrs. Miller's distinctive atmosphere and extensive critique of capitalism make it truly one of a kind. Beatty's knack for playing against type is most successful in this portrayal, adding depth and intrigue to an already fascinating film. Splendor in the Grass. This one has the power to be both heartbreaking and healing. It's a bittersweet tale of young love, loss, and accepting the hand you're dealt. Taking place on the eve of the Great Depression, Beatty's film debut follows Bud Stamper and Deanie Loomis, the most popular couple at their Kansas high school. Burdened by the lofty expectations and traditionalist values of their parents, they have to restrain their passionate desires and overwhelming love for each other until it tears them apart.
Boys don't respect a girl they can go all the way with. Boys want a nice girl for a wife.
Splendor handles coming of age with the maturity and wisdom that only comes from hindsight, while its characters embody the emotions as viscerally as living through it. Beatty and Natalie Wood are both devastating in their own right, each channeling their pain in very different ways. Bud is practically conditioned to hide his true feelings, so there's a visible tension Beatty gives off through his guarded demeanor and telling facial expressions. It's a portrayal so unlike anything he would do after, soft-spoken, internalizing, and powerless.
You're the only girl in the world for me, don't you know that, Deanie?
I want to be.
And if it weren't for you, If it weren't for you, Danny, I don't know.
On the other hand, Deanie's sadness is much more vivid. She's way stronger than she realizes, which is one of many reasons why her fight to hold herself together after the breakup is so upsetting to watch, but most of all it's because Natalie Wood is so convincing. She gives so much of herself to becoming Deanie and bearing all her character's grief without holding anything back.
I have a mind to call that boy and tell him.
Don't you dare! Don't you dare, Mom! Don't you dare! Don't you dare! Mom, if you do something like that, I'll do something desperate! I will, Mom! I will!
The parents and other figures of authority don't come off as antagonistic. Right or wrong, they're just doing what they believe is best.
Hey, someone heard of that. It's what I want that counts.
Son, a boy your age doesn't even know what he wants.
Even Bud's imposing father Ace, who comes the closest to being a villain, is still extremely likable thanks to Pat Hingle's absurdly intense performance. Yet his character's power and the tone of his scenes are never lost to his flourishes.
What the hell difference does it make? It's the same thing. It's the same thing exactly. It's just as pretty. Just as pretty. You look a bad dad. Just as pretty. You want that?
The film treats the adults with the same compassion it does the children, and that to me is brilliantly moving and honest. I feel so highly about this movie because I find it the most relatable to my life. Doing what you feel is right for yourself won't please everyone, and in the process you may lose some of those who are most meaningful to you. Oftentimes, the things you wanted so badly to work out end up being for the best that they didn't. This is one of the biggest takeaways from my formative years, and it's a theme echoed throughout the story. No other movie I've seen has captured my feelings of growing up and all that's lost and discovered so accurately and so universally that it transcends time and circumstance.
You gotta take what comes.
Yes.
For that reason, it's my personal favorite Beatty movie, but there's one left that I believe is his greatest. Reds, the working class versus the ruling class, a struggle as old as time. In 1917, one nation managed to overthrow a centuries-old monarchy. Fed up with poor leadership, brutal working conditions, and being ill-equipped to fight in World War I, Russia's workers, soldiers, and peasants came together to demand change. Mass protests and mutinies left Tsar Nicholas II no choice but to abdicate the throne. Within days, a provisional government took power, but as the people's suffering persisted, it too was overthrown later that year in an armed insurrection known as the Bolshevik Revolution. Jack Reed, an esteemed American journalist, was there with his wife and fellow activist Louise Bryant to document all that they witnessed in the hopes of bringing the revolutionary ideas and spirit back to America. This event is the centerpiece of Reds, with the lives of these two star-crossed socialists serving as a guide through one of history's most drastic turning points. From the moment he's introduced, Jack Reed is shown as active and devoted to every cause he supports, strongly against the US entering World War I and in favor of expanding labor unions. He believes unions are the answer to rectifying the mistreatment of the working class and empowering them to oppose the system that calls them to fight in its wars.
So the real question is, why do we have an economy where the poor have to pay so the rich won't lose money?
Progress isn't easy, however, as the capitalists have the police effectively in their pocket, as seen early on when officers violently break up a workers' assembly.
Excuse me, officer, these men have the legal right to assemble. That's all they're doing.
We know what the hell they're doing. What the hell you doing?
Me?
You.
I right.
You right? You wrong.
On top of that, America's Socialist Party is a complete joke, with unelected leaders put in place to keep the movement under wraps.
You see? Well, what the hell is police? That's the only way the executive committee can stay in power is by the use of the capitalist police. Raise your red cards. They'll resort to any tactics to keep the working class away from its true leadership because they're afraid of revolution.
The greatest betrayal of all comes when Woodrow Wilson is re-elected under the guise of keeping the U.S. out of the conflict. Yet within 6 months, the country is drawn in.
My name is Jack Reed. I'm from New York. This is not my war, and I'm not going to do anything to do with it.
Through Reed's dilemma, the film depicts the contrast in the American political climate pre- and post-revolution. Before, there seemed to be a general open-mindedness among the public towards socialist ideas, but the Red Scare that followed ended that sentiment, along with the government's full crackdown on radical views.
In other words, you mean the Red Scare, they got scared or we got scared? No, we didn't get scared.
Oh, sure. The Americans, they were frightened to death by it, you know, that it could occur here, sure.
And once they told the American people what communism was, people won't have nothing to do with the communism now. They know what it is.
Public opinion was solidly against anyone who had a good word for the Russian Revolution.
The movie intersperses these real-life testimonials with what's called the witnesses, who organically frame the story through their experiences and opinions, in turn revealing the frailty of memory and just how far removed these events were even by the 1980s. Jack and Louise, together or separately, appear in every scene, so the story unfolds entirely from their perspective. This is used to great dramatic effect when they reach war-torn Russia and witness the disturbing reality of revolution for the first time, something that had merely been a talking point back in America. From the contentious debates that make up the scenes in Greenwich Village to Jack and Louise's reliance on translators in Russia to fill them in, the people-first approach to storytelling is what makes the film so emotionally resonant and the exposition so natural.
Alex, how much time has the Kerensky government got left?
Any day now. Bolsheviks will strike.
Jack and Louise's love story, which ends up being Red's most prominent feature, succeeds because of Beatty and Diane Keaton's chemistry, as well as their monumental bond. Although their personal independence and responsibility to their work often cause strain, their devotion to each other triumphs over their differences. For everything they wish they could change, and even across their longest separations, it still feels like it's them against the world. Jack Nicholson plays the couple's perfect foil as playwright Eugene O'Neill, and you could cut the tension with a knife in his scene sparring with Keaton.
Don't let those village radicals keep you from being what you should be.
What do you think I should be?
The center of attention.
The genius of Nicholson's performance is how he keeps his composure while delivering his scathing critiques, and his eyes carry a potent sadness that's uncharacteristic of him. His signature arched eyebrows become a weapon when he twists the argument in his favor.
I seem to have touched a wound.
As the passive observer, O'Neill is the antithesis to Reed's idealism, and his skepticism is portrayed as an equally valid stance. The cinematography is just gorgeous. Everything, from the music to the set design and costumes, contributes to a stunning recreation of the period. Each location feels so immersive that it's easy to forget this is an early 80s production. The attention to detail is maintained from the quiet, intimate environments to the most grandiose. Given Beatty's reputation as a perfectionist, it's clear this level of authenticity is due to his vision. Reds is his masterpiece. A film worthy of intense study. It stands as his greatest contribution to the medium and the truest expression of him using his platform to tackle issues of lasting importance. The movie's challenging political and historical framework becomes relatable through its focus on human perspective, compassion, and conviction. Beatty was born to portray Jack Reed and to immortalize his story. Much like Reed using his influence as a writer to engage in revolutionary action, Beatty seems to share that same calling as a creative with a life in politics.
Politics sure plays hell with your poetry.
Here he found the perfect union of both passions, and with it he made an expansive ode to everyday people's ability to bring about unprecedented change. With little presence in the 21st century, Beatty has largely kept up the mystery. 2016 was the last time he appeared in a movie, as well as on any major press circuit. Since then, he's embraced and maintained a quiet existence and lets the work speak for itself. From his days as a fledgling actor to becoming a top-tier director, when you watch his movies, you see a reflection of a momentous life. The roles he turned down would have made him keep his place as the biggest movie star in history, but there isn't a single part I wish he had taken, because he prioritized the ones that spoke to him, and his catalog more than satisfies as it stands. I'm sure Beatty doesn't have a regret in the world, and with Hollywood in the palm of his hand, he delivered some of the smartest, most creative, and enlightening films ever made.